Hi, Diamond. Thank you so much for joining me at myGwork today to tell us about the amazing work you do in the US for Black trans women and Martsha's Plate. So firstly, I know you're involved in some fantastic work in the US. And I wondered if you could briefly just tell us about some of this work and why you created Martsha's Plate and Black Trans Women and especially given the fact that we're honouring Trans Awareness Week this week.
Oh gosh, so Martsha's Plate started back in 2017. This is our October the 5th was our 4-year anniversary. And in 2016, during the election of Donald Trump, I kept seeing white trans women being centered when it comes to the conversation about trans people, and their experiences are valid, but their experiences is a much different experience when we talk about disparity. And so this is the first time that we're having a national political discussion about transness. And so I thought that there was a blind spot that everybody wasn't taking into account. So I said, well, we have the big old internet. I can create my own platform and be able to share trans leaders and trans experiences and trans stories and trans opinions. And I brought on a trans masculine individual and I brought in another trans woman, and we decided to kind of share and create a space where we can share the Black experience. And so it not only shares the trans experience, but it also shares our leaders and our allies too. So we have lesbians, we have gay men, we have non-binary people. We really try to encompass everybody in that are involved in our circle of people, in our movement. And so, yeah, that's what Martsha's Plate is, an archive and a social commentary. And then Black Transwomen Inc. is a nonprofit organization that under my leadership, I started as a board member 10 years ago, a part of a steering committee once the founder, Kamarian Anderson, founded it. And now, 10 years later, I have become the executive director. And under my leadership, I focus on housing, anti-violence, and dismantling like prisons and jails and stuff like that. And so for me, housing is so important because you can't focus on anything else in your transition and being safe, and if you don't know where you're going to lay your head. And so we have a program where if you are on the verge of homelessness, or you're trying to get the first month rent of your a new apartment, if you get what I'm saying, you just can't quite make it, we want to be able to give you that kind of deposit, and we want to be able to help you in regards to, even put you in an Airbnb, put you in a hotel, those type of things, to get you some kind of emergency housing to be able to get you on your feet. Also, anti-violence during the George Floyd uprising that everybody globally, his death was affecting people globally. During that, literally in that same area, during what was going on, there was a girl named Iana Dior that was attacked, brutally attacked by cisgender people and cisgender men and women. So in that regards, we actually flew up to where she was and was able to put her in a situation with funding to be able to move from where she was at. So because where she got attacked at is right by her house. So she was able to, if she needed to, had to make a decision to move out of that location where she was unsafe, or pay for lawyers, or do whatever she needed to do to be able to prosecute the people that attacked her and put her out of that, put her in a safe place so she can make those kind of decisions with a sound mind with her and her mother. and we stepped in and flew up there to help her in that regard. So this is like an anti-violence response. Now that is reactive. We also have a proactive program within that task force where if you are in a domestic violence situation, because statistically we are not being murdered by strangers or some hater transphobe that we don't know. Usually we are being murdered by intimate partner. It's not about deception. We are actually being murdered just along with cisgender Black women by our intimate partner. That is one of the leading cause of death in amongst all Black women. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that if you are in a situation where you are in a domestic violence situation and you can't get out, we want to make sure, once again, we're going to flip you over to our housing program where we can get you out of the situation and put you in a hotel. We can put you in an Airbnb. We can put you in our network of housing situations across the South. And you can be in a stable, safe place instead of sitting in somebody's house that is financially abusing you and and just in a situation where you can't get out of because you don't have any opportunities because of discrimination and et cetera. And last but not least, our bailout program, where if you are in jail and you are and you have a non-violent offense, we actually bail you out. So you're not sitting up in jail dealing with the transphobia that is a part of the carceral state. And we did that because in New York, in Rikers, a trans woman by the name of Layleen Polanco she was having a seizure in jail and they let her die.
No.
And so because of that, we learned through the investigation of her death that she was only in there for a prostitution charge, and she only had a $500 bail.
Wow.
So she could have gotten out if somebody bailed her out for $500. All this money nonprofits have. Why wouldn't this woman would still be alive if she had $500 of bail money? And that was crazy to me. And I wanted to make sure on my watch, in my state and in my city, that no girl is just sitting in jail dealing with what she has to do with, the unsafeness of these, people in jail of that, putting a trans woman in that situation. We wanted to make sure that no girl, because of a small amount like that. Now if you're in there for some violent stuff, then we can't help you. But if it's a non-violent situation, then, we want to be able to help you and fit that bill. And so that's what the bailout does. And so those are the type of programming with Martsha's Plate and Black Transwomen Inc. that we do, just to try to help on the ground, those kind of core things that help people in dire need.
Wow, I'm in awe of those amazing programs that you're providing and the awesome help that you're providing to, much needed and a fabulous response on your part. Can you tell me about a bit about your transitioning journey and how your experience led you to create these programs and initiatives?
So I transitioned when I was 13. I'm actually 40 now. So around 94, 95 is when I came out. And as anybody knows, transness and in the political conversation or the cultural conversation around trans people in 95 is much different than it is right now in 2021. We have it where, it's not beautiful, but it's way different than, back then. The only representation was Jerry Springer. in America, it was Jerry Springer. And is this a man? Is this a woman? We were still kind of in that underbelly subculture. Even under the regular LGBT, the LGB, we were kind of a subculture within a subculture. And so we didn't have the kind of discourse that is happening now in our culture, the beautiful representation, like documentaries like Disclosure, shows like Pose, and all these trans celebrities that we are seeing kind of flourish. And even not just celebrities, just amazing people like even Rachel Levine, which is a health commissioner here in the United States, and so many different people. And as I don't align with her politics, but even like Caitlyn Jenner, I don't align with her politics at all, but I'm mentioning her as a representation of like an older trans woman that's transitioned later in life. I appreciate that part of her story. She can be seen as like a beacon of, oh my God, there's hope for me as an older trans person. Da, da. Now her politics, no. but but even that, so we have a totally different discussion. So for me, when I was in high school, I felt alone. I didn't feel like there was any representation, but I was strong enough, and I had the circumstances let me kind of transition, not kind of like transition between junior high school and high school. And so I went to high school as affirmed as myself, as a girl. Didn't have any issues until I graduated, not graduated until I was about to graduate my senior year. And they tried to stop me from going to the prom in a gown. And I sued them. And I'm in conservative Indiana. And nobody thought that I would win. And in 2 days, I teamed up with the ACLU and I actually won my case to be able to go to a prom in an affirming gown. And so that was my start on accident in getting bit by the activist bug, I would say. And so then I went to college, and I was the first trans woman to go to Jackson State University in Jackson, the conservative Jackson, Mississippi. Anybody who knows these states that I'm talking about, Indiana and Mississippi, they are, these are birthplaces of Ku Klux Klan. Like these are very conservative places that it was kind of groundbreaking to do the things that I was doing. And I can't tell you that it was intentional, because I was young and it was not intentional. I was just trying to live my life and be the woman that I wanted to be and go to college and go to school and do those things. It was definitely not intentional yet. And so went to Jackson State. It was groundbreaking. It was bittersweet. They used to try to throw boiling hot water on me because they put me in a boys' dorm.
Oh no.
And so I remember one time they knocked on my door, and they thought that I was just going to open the door, but I didn't. They had boiled water and and when I opened the door, they tried to throw the boiled water on me just to harm me for absolutely no reason. And these were some of the things that I was going through on a daily basis, like literally having to fight people, literally having to be isolated. And this actually was the first time that there literally was no allies. I didn't have even the queer people, because this was a very conservative place. Even the queer people were scared to be around me because I was such this, I want to say high profile, like I wasn't a celebrity, but kind of I was. I'm the first trans person to even go to this school. And so they were like, even queer people was like, oh no, you bring in too much attention. And so I didn't even have who would be my normal allies, cisgender women and gay men and, lesbians. Even them were kind of ostracizing me and isolating me. So it was a hard time. But I got through it and I survived, and the culture shifted in that school. And there's so many queer and trans people that are going there that even the professors are talking about me and saying that like it's people that laid the foundation for you. And so in that regard, that's when I got the attention of I need to be intentional about the activism that I do, because I am literally seeing, even though I'm going through the fire, I'm literally seeing the fruits of my labor when I go back to the school, and when I hear people talking, they see me in different places and saying, oh, I remember when I wasn't even out of the closet and you were going to that school and I was going to that school. You were giving me hope, even though I was still scared in that moment. You were giving me hope. And so I went on to be when I started to be more intentional. I started using social media as a tool. And I became one of the first African-American YouTube partners, and started to, once again, for 12 years ago in 2008, started archiving trans stories and trans initiatives and trans news. Me and Monica Roberts teamed up, who is the late, great Monica Roberts, journalist extraordinaire. We lived in Houston together, and we were able to just start kind of archiving things. And she was a great friend. And I found out that she actually had put me in a paper back when I had sued my high school. And that was our beginning of our friendship, because because she transitioned in 94, even though she was 20 years my senior. We transitioned around the same time, and she saw me win the case and put it in a newspaper in Louisville, Kentucky. And so it was kind of wild to see that happen. And then, we both started on the steering committee of Black Transwomen Inc. And that led us to the work that we are doing now. And so, yeah, I've been very intentional for the past 12 years, like 12 years in creating space for trans people politically and social, and uplifting the social economic status. But I've been doing the work since 17.
Wow. I mean, despite the horrific experiences you've been through, you were groundbreaking back then, and you're still groundbreaking right now. So thank you, for continuing the work and doing what you're doing. So if we come back to today, what are some of the biggest challenges do you think that trans people of color and Black trans women are facing right now? And do you think, for example, or do you feel that Black trans women suffer more than other trans women of color, for example?
It's not even a feeling, it's statistics, it's numbers. And so it's not even a feeling, it's definitely, we know based on the numbers and the research that is at our fingertips, when people who have done surveys across the country, when people who have looked at cases across the country, if you look at the trans women who have been, just in the United States, who have been murdered, look at what they look like. Just look at the pictures of them. It's not only dominated by Black trans women, it also is dominated by dark-skinned Black trans women. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not even a light-skinned trans woman like me. And so dominating those kind of statistics. And so for me, yes, when it comes to the things that are plaguing our community is going to be access to healthcare, is going to be access to housing, access to jobs and to financial security, and access to just safety and anti-violence, not being attacked, or incidents of violence. When we think about like Malaysia Booker, who was attacked for a fender bender in Dallas and then found dead a month later, that was just an incident that we see people recording trans people getting attacked on the bus, trans people getting attacked on the train, trans people, simultaneously, while all these amazing things are happening, people actually in the margins, people on the streets and in community are actually being attacked. And so to me, housing, anti-violence, and healthcare are the main things that are the main issues, and those are the barriers to be in a safe place, to be safe in public accommodations, and to actually have access to healthcare and secure jobs and secure work. Now, 2020, we got title. We got the Supreme Court to kind of rule on our side, and we have that anti-discrimination. We were included in that back in June 15th of 2020, where we now have workforce discrimination protections on a federal level, which we didn't have before. And so, yes, we have that protection now. So now we have an actual legal standing to be able to sue somebody if they're discrimination. But we also know that a law and policy on the books does not change the culture immediately. we know that from Black people who, have had protection since 1964. But we still know that discrimination happens, in the workplace. And so, yeah, I think making sure that we actually do what needs to be done to give people access and reduce the barriers to get those kind of things diminished in regards to the violence and the lack of housing and the discrimination, and put it in place and consistently put it in place so that we can flourish just like the rest of the people.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as you rightly point out, the government in the US and in some parts around the world, they are taking steps to protect the trans community, the LGBT community, But do you think that, you know, especially in the US and the governments and businesses, are they doing enough to protect the trans community? And what more could they be doing, not just to keep the trans community safe, but to, you know, ensure that they've got housing and, you know, to ensure that they aren't discriminated at work, and also to ensure that they're seen and heard, and they're, you know, included, not just socially, but at work too?
So no, they're not doing enough, and they can do so much more to put us in a position of success. When we think about the ramifications of a I was about to say a Trump pregnancy, the ramification of a Trump presidency is that we weren't put on the census. And we know in our culture, in American culture, the census is important because that is how they determine who can get funding and who can get money for infrastructure that actually helps them in their community. And so we didn't get put on a census. So we want the government to put us on a census, because if we know how many trans people are in the country, we know that this is a group that we can help and we can give funding to on a governmental level. So that's one thing that they can do and start from, so we can know how many of us are out here. But also they can have policies put in place on a federal level that protects gender identity and expression, make that an actual protected category, not just in workforce, but, you know, in everything, when it comes to housing, when it comes to work, when it comes to healthcare, make that a protective countrywide policy, so that we can stop, can have protocols and procedures to stop discrimination and discrimination and harassment in your workplace, in your home, you know, in healthcare facilities, and, you know, schools. Have that like a nationwide protection. Also, policies in regarding the process of gender transition. How can we make that easier for people when it comes to the institutional protocols? You get what I'm saying? Making sure that employees and healthcare providers actually have a protocol to help people along in their transition. Education and compliance. When we think about providing information and education about trans people in schools, and to the parents, and support systems in schools for parents of transitioning children, and in college for transitioning young adults, and then older transitioning people. How do we have education and process to teach people? Because education is the key for people to change people's minds and hearts about trans people, and have that kind of information a part of the curriculum in school, a part of the curriculum in community college. Anybody that's getting federal funds, make sure that they have those kind of education and information and training, so that we can, you know, be compliant in creating a great space for trans people to be a part of the culture. Making documentation, updating the records of our personal documentation, making that easier and less barrier for us to change our name, get our gender marker changed to what we needed to be, or what's more appropriate for us. Those type of things are really important, because that's one of the first things that helps us to live a normal life. If I'm sitting here looking like Diane and you have Lawrence on my birth certificate because they won't let me change it, that can lead to somebody being discriminatory against me. When it comes to restrooms and locker rooms and all that kind of stuff, protection, so we can use the bathroom in peace like regular people. Dress code, make sure that we can dress how we want to dress. And all these can be policies put into place on a federal level when it comes to where, but not privately owned. You know, if you have a privately owned place, you make the rules. But if you're getting government funding, or if it's a federal situation, then put the policy in place. It creates a norm. And Last but not least, any kind of make policies and remove any policies that would allow for discriminatory healthcare practice or healthcare exclusions when it comes to insurance, what they don't cover, medical needs that doctors and psychiatrists across the country have created the standard that is trans care. How can we make sure that the policies and benefits that we're supposed to get with our insurance or with our public health care are not excluding trans needs? And so I think all making sure the federal government takes the initiative on all those kind of categories, I think it's really important, because and that's what will get them to the level where they're doing enough.
So although we're moving in the right, governments are moving in the right direction, there's a lot of work to do in terms of policies and education. So, wow, a long way to go. In your opinion, what kind of influence has the Black Lives Matter movement had on the Black trans community?
Oh, wow. It has a powerful influence. Alicia, Patrice, and Opal, those are three Black queer women that started that movement. And from the beginning, one of the pillars was to include trans people in that movement. When they talked about Black lives, they talking about all Black lives, not just cis Black men, not just the men that are being killed by police, not just them. It is like when we're talking about Black lives mattering, they are talking about all Black lives, not the sex workers, the respectability, the non-respectable ones that people want to throw to the wayside. They were very clear in talking about all Black people. And even in their organization in the beginning in 2015, they included Black trans leaders in the leadership. And so just the powerfulness of that, the money that they donate to different Black-led, trans-led organizations, ours is one of them. Just what the power that they have given us when it comes to the voice in discussions. And there's so many times that we have been a part of, I've seen them include us in conversation, particularly Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, Opal, they always mention trans people. Now there's other people who are like, who are more problematic. But when it comes to the founders, they were very clear in including us in the conversation. So I feel empowered by them. I align with their politics. I align with their message. And so I don't think we will be having this kind of trans conversation that we have had in the past 5-6 years if that movement hadn't happened. And so it is because we are a part of that, I think it empowered us. And so I think it was definitely impactful in my life and in the community life.
Oh yes, I completely agree. And I think, that's absolutely a great result. And I hope, both movements, carry on empowering and providing a platform for a diverse audience. Just in terms of, things have come along, I wouldn't say a long way, but they have come along. What's your vision for the future for Black trans women and trans women of color?
Wow. So I envision our joy being centered more than our deaths. I would want the deaths to be reduced, and yes, commemorate people who pass, but I really want our contributions to the culture, our joy, the amazing work that we're doing out here. When we think about the Transcultural District, Aria Saeed, when we think about, journalist, media guru that is Raquel Willis, when we think about up and coming politicians like Mariah Moore, teachers and abolitionists like Dominique Morgan. There are so many girls out here doing great work. And so centering their joy. And then, you know, even trans men, like, why are we not talking about some of the great things that they're doing? When we think about Courtney Ziegler, when we think about Carter Brown, when we think about, you know, these Black trans men that are out here really doing innovative things in tech, innovative things in nonprofit sectors. Just it's for me, centering our joy and centering the amazing things that we do, and not just our deaths and our disparity, is the vision that I want to see. I want you to see how powerful we are. I want you to see how resilient we are through showcasing our joy and our creativity and the things that we create. Also, when we talked about Black Lives Matter, the vision that I want people to get is, you know, all lives matter. We want all of our lives to matter equally. The reason why we have to say Black Lives Matter is because they're not mattering. And so the vision is to create. I know that people want to say as a rebuttal, all lives matter, but you get what I'm saying? That's ideal. Idealistically, we want all lives to matter equally. We want to take care of all people. We want to take care of everybody's needs. And so the vision for me is that all lives matter actually being true. So we won't have the necessity of being very specific and saying Black Lives Matter. Women, we don't have the necessity of saying Me Too, because women have been silent about rape and assault and those things. The vision is for us not to have the need for these things, because we have structured our society in a way that makes us better for the people on the margins, and better for the people who are mostly impacted by some of these oppressive systems like sexism and racism and homophobia and transphobia and all these big systems that we act like are huge, but our own circle. The vision is all of us, our circle. We create, we impact our circle. Your starts in your home. It starts at your church. It starts at your job. What power do you control? Where do you control power? And making sure that place is safe for everybody. How do you, that's what it is. It's about using your power and your privilege just in the circle. Don't worry about the whole big system, just in your circle. And if everybody did that, the system will crumble.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And to end our interview today, and I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, Diamond, are there one or two bits of advice that you could offer someone who's considering transitioning or going through a transition? What are the one or two bits of advice you think that would be useful to them?
Community is so important. Build community of people who love you, affirm you, who are going to support you during the dark times, who are going to love you through them, who is just in your corner and just want you to be happy, that wants to love you, that are not making pronouns a big deal, that is not making, you get what I'm saying, people who love you and want you to be happy and understand that transition makes you happy. So build a community around you. Sometimes that includes people who are related to you, and sometimes it doesn't. And so sometimes it's your chosen family that are the ones that are your rocks, not necessarily your blood family. But sometimes your blood people are amazing. Like my mom was amazing. And so rest in peace. She passed away in December. And so definitely build community and don't rush it. Don't feel your transition is your own. It is your personal journey. It is you, the type of woman that you want to be, just like Sister to People. They are figuring out what type of woman, what type of man, what type of human being that they want to be in the world, how they want to represent, how they want to be perceived, the type of integrity that they want to have. We all are doing that. That is just a human experience. And so Understand that you don't have to look like anybody else. You don't have to fit any kind of Eurocentric beauty standards. You can be whoever you want to be. You can be the type of woman or man that you want to be. That's the point of acknowledging that you are a trans person. And that is powerful. You are really taking taking life by the horns and creating your own lane. It is your lane. Be steadfast, be stable in that idea that you deserve to be here. You deserve love. You deserve peace of mind. You deserve all the great things that the rest of humankind deserves as well.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for finishing off with that advice. I'm sure many people will find that useful and uplifting. I'm honoured to have interviewed you today, Diamond. I hope this is the first of many conversations. Thank you so much from myself and myGwork.
Thank you, G-Work, for having me. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Diamond.